Well, hello, folks. I'm L.A. Little, and this is your daily TA wrap. Where we take a look at these markets, and we do it from a neoclassical perspective. Each time asking ourselves one question, and that is, what happened today? And what does it tell us about the coming ones? I do this show 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here from the base of the beautiful Rocky Mountains. Folks, I am glad you could join me. We had another topsy-turvy, maybe is the expression. I don't know what the expression is. We had a wild day, a volatile day. Maybe it's easier just to talk about it that way because once more these markets were all over the place, and man, if you want to ride a bucking horse, get on the ride in the morning and ride it throughout the day on these markets, at least for now. Industrials, they end up, what do we got here? 89 points higher, 16,262.5. S&P's 12 1/3 higher, 1842, almost 1843. Composite 11.5 higher, 4,034. Again, note the outperformance of the listed issues as compared to the OTCs. NDX 13 higher, 3487, almost 3488. The Russell 4 points higher, third of a point, 1119.5. We had gold down about 32, 35. Actually, it was down 50 at one point early this morning prior to the opening of the market. The pre-trading that takes place. Not sure what caused the big spike down. There was a big one. It traded down about 32 points most of the day, ended down 26.5. We had silver off as well. Oil off slightly. The dollar is a little bit stronger, not much there. And bonds up pretty big today as there was a run to safety. Why safety? Well, looked like the story today was Russia. Russia was spotted in eastern Ukraine. We had some economic news to start the day off, but the real news that started driving it was Russia for about 2 hours. European markets closed quite a bit lower off that news, and that was a lot of pressure today as the market was coming off those highs, back down to the lows again. Let me put up the intraday chart like we did yesterday. You'll see what I'm talking about. I'm going to pull it in 2 days. This was yesterday's wild ride. It was a gap up, higher, trades down, then runs higher into the close, right? Then you start off today. You gap up, you run higher, continuing yesterday's run, and then you come all the way back down again, right? You lose everything. And on the NDX, right, not only did you lose everything, you lost more. And then what do? They flip this thing back around about 11 o'clock my time, and they run it up all the rest of the day, right? And if I go to the NDX, you'll see what I'm talking about. Not only did you lose yesterday's lows, you even went beyond it. Now you run them back the other way. The NDX hasn't got back over the highs from yesterday. So, what's going on here? Right? What is the story? Well, the story is twofold. One, we actually had ABCD structures to the downside. And those ABCD structures on the listed issues were within, just points, small percentages of being completed. If I look here at the S&P 500, it got within 80 cents. On this day, 80 cents of closing off an ABCD structure. Well, that's pretty much done. The break of multiple swing points says that you should try to extend down 2 to 3 bars. Well, 2 bars it did extend, 3 bars it did extend today. It didn't make no lower lows, but it was down there at the same price points. And so this market actually did what was suggested from those multiple swing point lows. The ABCD structures being completed suggested that we'd try to flip around. And so that completion of those structures actually led to that flip around. Dow Jones looks about the same. I haven't been looking at it much lately, but there's not much different here. The same sort of thing. ABCD structure was a little bit different on it. If we draw that one in, you had it from here to there, back up, back down. That one also got within just a few points. The Dow was within 6 points of finishing off an ABCD structure. So both of the listed issues flip down, right, do what they're supposed to. Now, let's go over to the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq actually still had another percent to go on its ABCD structure as of last night. ABCD structure measures to there. The Nasdaq, you know, it hadn't met it those last 2 days. Well, sure enough, today they run it down there, they finish it off. And what we should notice here is not only did we finish off the ABCD structures, we tested into the support zone defined by this wide price spread high volume bar from Feb 3. Remember, that was the bar that we were trying to get into the beginning. We got into it pretty deep. It wants to finish it off. It does. And not only that, it tests the low. Now that low is a low not only on this time frame, but on the weekly as well. And that's danger zone when you start playing with those. Yet it holds, has less volume than the big volume bar here, more volume than the swing point low. And what does that tell you? Well, from my model perspective, that tells me it's going to come back down here again. And that's an important piece of information to tuck away in your little neppy somewhere, right? Because this thing is going to trade back down here at some point in the future. That's one big takeaway. The other big takeaway is that you finish off the ABCD structures, you test the lows, you test the support zone, you don't have the volume to break it down, you flip around, and you do a hammer. Is there much more we could ask for? This thing's going higher. NDX looks exactly the same. Exact same story, exact same trade, looks exactly the same. Hammer back the other way. Our friend the Russell. If we look at the Russell comes down, slightly different structure. The Russell also had not finished off the ABCD structure. Well, today it does. Right? It gets right in there. The Russell low that it was trying to finish off was 98.30. It got to 1095.79, so it finishes it off. It also comes into a big high volume lower, at least into the support zone, defined by this 398 versus 373. Doesn't have the volume, does a hammer, finishes it off, flips around, back the other way. So you test, test, test. Can't break it lower. They're going to take it back the other way, folks. It's what we talked about the last couple days. Bounce coming. Had to finish off those ABCDs, though, on the weakest of the indexes. Didn't quite do it on the strongest. That's also something that you always try to look at is like, you know, the weakest ones are the ones that should trade lower, right? They're the ones that should finish off stuff. And it took them 2 days of probing, but they finally did it. I suspect we saw the low today for some period of time. We're going to try to run back the other way now. Let's go to the sectors, because the sectors actually were set up, in a number of them, were set up the same sort of way. But the main thing to take out of the sectors is which ones are the strongest. Excuse me. So if you're looking at these and you're trying to decide, you know, which ones do I want to play with? If I do the ABCD structure on the IYT, for example, that one measures down to 130.33. Well, we didn't get to 130.33, right? That low, the low that we got was on the first day down. The last two have held. So that one's a little bit stronger in that it still had, 0.75% that it was trying to knock off and couldn't do it. When you're looking at these and you're trying to decide which one's strongest, you just look to see if they finish off ABCDs or not. For example, if I go over to XLF, that one finished it off back here on the first day. And the XLF has been trading up since then. That doesn't mean it's stronger. That just means it finished it off earlier. Right? They don't have to move exactly the same, right? But you did finish it off. You finished it off, more than finished it off, and now you're bouncing. This thing, just like many of these, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to look at the bounce and see how they can bring it back up. And so a number of these, at least on the indexes, and a few of them on the sectors, actually have swing point lows to test on the way back up. On the XLF, you can see the trend change here. You can also see another trend change there. That trend change was this swing point low, and it's already traded above it. So that tells you two things. One, it's a little bit stronger than it should be. Yeah, to some degree. It kind of lines up this way. I'd really believe that if it gets over this one. And that's going to be the test, right? And because it's coming back within 6 bars into this area, right? That will be the test as it comes back in there. 2178 or so to about 2208. I would expect it tries to get up towards the top because it's coming back within 6 bars. And if that's the case, right, if it pokes into this over the next couple days, that would be the target. And then that would be the real test. And many times they line up to where that's a very difficult test. For example, in this case, you broke down on significant volume, right? You had some good volume coming back up today, but we had good volume everywhere today. That will be the test, right, as it comes back in this big bar, as well as that swing point lows high, the retest regen cycle. So those are the kinds of things you want to measure as this thing comes back, right? You're going to look at those guys that were the weakest and say, okay, can they get over places that they shouldn't? Just as well as looking at the strongest and seeing if they can do it. And I didn't talk about that. I'll quickly flip back over there. I have talked about it the last couple of days. As we're coming back up, for example, there's a retest regen zone here. And that's what we're going to want to measure, right? Can it get over that? If it does, then that tells you it's probably a range, not a continuation. And that's very important to know. Okay, so as this thing bounces, right, it's potentially setting up another ABCD structure to the downside. If it bounces all the way up here and fails, well, it's not too big, right? Not a very large one on the way down. But if it stops right where it is today, for example, it's going to be a larger one. And if it comes all the way over this, well, we're back into a range trade, right? The range is back in play. And so that's the sort of data, that's the sort of information the market is trying to tell you. You just need to know where to look, and you need to know what's important and what isn't. I'm not going to go through all the sectors. Let's pop over and see what the ox markets look like. I'm going to start with the dollar, because the dollar has been trying to climb up again. Yeah, it's weak, but it's coming back up. It's going to test into the gap area again. It can probably get another day of bounce. Let's see what the bonds did. Now the bonds, money ran to them again. Bonds test higher, close higher. I never did go back to look at that. Let me pop over to a different chart. Let me go to, where is it? I'm not sure if I can believe that number. All right, here we go. Dollar is so TLT. Yeah, Now, yeah, what is that? I can't trust these. See, most of them are not. Most of them are adjusted data. I don't know if that's true or not. We'll see. We'll see tomorrow. I believe that's not correct. I believe the bonds are extending. So the bonds were doing an ABCD structure on the upside. That measure was here to there, and it's actually completed it. So the bonds, to me, probably going to pull back here. Let's go over to gold, which was taken to the cleaners today. Now, gold was actually kind of interesting because gold came into this big high volume bar, right? And it turned like a dime on it. Didn't have the volume as it came into it. Closes out on the highs almost. Gold's probably going to bounce back up into this resistance zone. And then we'll see if gold's going to try to set up some sort of ABCD structure down to go test these lows again. But right now, looks like it wants to try to bounce again. And the never-ending saga of gold, because gold, remember, is trying to put in a longer-term turn on the weekly. And so that's really what's happening there. Let's go back to silver. I haven't looked at silver in a while. It's certainly the weaker sister. And yeah, that one's still struggling. So it takes out the swing point low and it does it with volume. 1887 closes over it. So it doesn't take out the swing point low, just bangs it with volume though. Again, when you hit something like that, you hit it with that much volume, you're going to be back down there. So even though this is going to try to hold for now, which gold is also suggesting, we'll probably see it trade back down there. Let's see what the Moonies look like. Let me see, what's the symbol here? Bear with me a second, let me go find them. Ox markets, MUB I believe it is, MUB. Yeah, so they're trading at highs. Well, it's not like there's a lot of fear there, huh? Junk bonds. Junk bonds usually have a harder time if the market's struggling, and they are, but you know, the junk bonds are still holding that range, so they still look fine. That's also indicative of the market probably going to hold. All right, let's go look quickly at the foreign markets. I got a couple questions emailed to me. If you want to email me, send it to here. If you want to text it there. And if you want to type it in, just jot it in over there on your lively little channel that you're sitting on. Let's go see what... I want to go to Europe because Europe is the one that took the brunt of it today. Okay, so it did trade hard, traded back in the gap, gave it up, has less volume. That still looks like it's going to try to trade sideways to lower. Let's see what the DAX looks like. DAX comes down, doesn't have the volume, trades into the low. 867, 881. That low is 91.81. Closes under it. Wow. Well, that's interesting because I was thinking Europe was going to try to bounce, but that looks to me like Europe's going to continue to struggle. Let me look what the FTSE looks like. If so, that's going to put a damper on us in the morning. Maybe we don't gap up for once, huh? Actually, the FTSE can hold, but the rest of them are struggling. China was... let me pop over here to the world markets. China was struggling last night after, umpteen days of up. Here's the large cap 8 shares trading in Hong Kong. Yeah, and they're coming back down finally. And no volume, but coming off after that big run up. They've got GDP numbers out tonight, so it's going to be a big night in China. Hong Kong's probably going to look about the same, and it does. And that's what happens. Everybody gets all excited and thinks that this is a brand new leg up and this one's for real. Well, maybe it is, But we've seen this disappointment before. This is still a big range trade and it hasn't changed. Let's look at the all ordinaries. They probably struggled on that news as well. They actually held. Still looks good. Still a range trade, and my friends up in Toronto, in Canada in general, also still a range. So it doesn't look too bad. How about Brazil? Brazil's been on a tear as well, and they're starting to come back off finally. So you're starting to see that move back down. Japan's been trying to break down, and now here's another case where you're still under the lows, right? 2 to 3 bars extension. Tonight will be a big night for Japan. If they can't climb back above those lows and start testing them pretty soon, Japan's going to blow out the whole bottom. And they're definitely trying to do that. All right, let's look at what questions you might have. I had a couple emailed to me. Let me go to those first, and then I'll come back to any that you've got typed in for me. So let me see. What do we got here? We got Bill wants to know about PPC, and let me type these in so I can see what sectors they're in and stuff. ADM. All right, so PPC, this guy, Pilgrim's Pride. This is in the XLP sector, which has been doing well. So this is consumer, non-discretionary. These guys, if I remember right, are chicken farmers, and they're testing the highs. He wants to know about them on an intermediate term time frame, so let's pop that up and see. So you're over the highs, you're extending. Yeah, nothing looks wrong with these. They're still doing fine. You know, you got a suspect breakout, so at some point it's going to come back and test probably. But, you know, for now, this is up and away. Going back to the daily, you're testing the highs. 1.082, you got 1.1. That looks like it's going to try to go higher. You know, it's over the high tonight, isn't it? It's 2141, closes at 2148. So you got a breakout. Looks like more extension to me. And let's look at the other one, ADM. ADM also in the same sort of business, same sector. ADM. And let me pop up my data on it. Yeah, so ADM is doing the same sort of thing, farm products. And that one doesn't look quite as strong on the daily. Let's go to the weekly. Okay, so it broke out, had the volume, but it's doing a retest regen right away. This one still looks fine. It's just that it's got a bit more of a struggle going on. I'm trying to find an ABCD structure, but I can't find one. It's still just up. There's no B point yet. Yeah, you may get a pullback on this one, so I'd be a little bit more careful with it. Pilgrim's Pride, though, just continues higher. But the pullback here is probably a buy. And all of consumer goods, right? I mean, last year, if you remember, we did the same thing, right? We started out the year, even though the whole year ramped up, people moved into the safety stuff to start the year, and as the year continued, they continued to pile into it because of the fear that the rest of the market wasn't going to stay higher. Well, the rest of the market did, and they finally cooled off. But for the better part of the year, they had a big run. It looks like they're doing the same sort of thing this year. Let's see what we got over here for questions in the room. Where is my... I'm having a hard time here. Here we go. Japan opens up 1.9%. Oh, okay. Well, I guess that answers that question. So it is going to get back in there and do the retest regen. I wouldn't be jumping on Japan, but it did need to get back up there. LA, tell me if it's okay to start investing on MJNA. Well, don't you love that symbol? That sounds like marijuana to me. Let's go Let's go look and see what we got here. MJNA, and you're asking about the monthly. So let me pop it in so I can see the charts. So you investing, or are you hoping to get some trial products or something? Medical marijuana. Okay, so this is a penny stock. Trades, is this on the OTCBB, I believe? Looks like it is. I can't tell from the index listing. So, all right, let's pull over the monthly, because that's really what he's asking. Okay, so on the monthly, you know, the problem here is this, and I don't want to dissuade you. If you want to invest in this, then you can, but whenever I see a stock that's under $1, under $2 even, you know, I don't take them that seriously. You know, they're under $1 for a reason. Now, it doesn't mean that it can't trade higher, but, you know, when you're saying investing, you're talking about something you're going to buy and you're going to hold. I don't know that you can buy and hold this. I mean, look at how many shares it's trading, 1 billion shares. Okay? This is just a pump stock, right? Where it's in fad now because of Colorado, you know, and elsewhere, Oregon, you know, where they've legalized this. I just saw vending machines roll out for marijuana vending machines now. You know, it's a fad right now. It's a hot thing. I'm sure there's a play, but I don't believe it's in these penny stocks. And maybe I should do some homework, or maybe you guys can share some homework you've done. There's got to be plays on this, and maybe those plays are with the you know, I usually think about the pick and shovel guys. Who's selling all the, you know, the heat lamps and all those kinds of things, right? Those are the guys I'd be looking at. Maybe the security systems that go into these places. You know, the surveillance systems, whatever. I'm sure there's a play. I don't think it's in these particular companies, though. And I don't know what these guys actually do. Let me see if I can find out right quick. They operate industrial hemp markets to seed and stalk or isolate high-value extracts. So these guys are basically growers. You know, I can't advise you to buy this, and I'm sorry, I can't do that. Look at the weekly right quick. You know, if I'm going to do anything with this, I'm going to let it come all the way to the bottom again. You know, 11 cents. If it can hold 11 cents, you can probably trade it. I wouldn't invest in it, though. So, that's my take. I'm out of time here. Markets have done what they needed to do, right? They've come down, they've tested, and tested. They got hammer reversals, extensions that were completed. They're going to try to trade higher. The next question is, where do they go to, and how do they look when they get there? And if you haven't watched previous videos where I've talked about that, or the earlier part that I talked about today, you know, go check them out, because, you know, that's the next trade, right? The next trade is when it gets up there and one can decide what that means. From here, it's up, folks. They want to bounce them. Have a great night. Thanks for joining me. Tell a friend, tell two. I'm LA. This is, and it was, your daily TA wrap. Have yourself a great night. I'll see you next time. Take care.